Frank, tell me about Anthony Tabbita.
With Anthony Tabbita, before we start with him, we got to start with his dad. Like many of my friends growing up, to understand the mentality of where we got what we got, you know. So we start with his dad. His dad, Joe Tabbita, Joe Ubalar Medano Tabbita. They call him Ubalar Medano because that's where he was from, Palermo, and that means somebody that's from Palermo. He was struggling at one time. When I met Anthony, they were living in Bushwick, and my family was friends with his family, so we knew each other. They weren't starving by no means. They always had what they had, but their dad wanted to make some moves and actually wanted to have his kids what any dad wants, the best things in life. You know, there was two siblings, and his dad was friends with the very close, and he was around the clique actually, Patsy Conti's clique. There was Enzo Pollara, who was Conti's go-to guy, his thug, you know, in my neighborhood anyhow. There was John DeLeo, who was his loan shark. There was Passerante, another tough guy, did 15 years, the older guy, Passerante. And and um and there was Poyesi. No, Poyesi did the 15 years. Passerante didn't. My bad. He was the tough guy, did 15 years. And this clique, they hung out on White Court FAMU. It was a Gambino hangout, Sicilian Gambino hangout, Zips, whatever you want to call it. And they hung out there. At one point, Joe gets the opportunity, talking about Anthony's father, and he moves his family to Ridgewood. He pulled a couple of moves, made some shots, you know, pulled a couple of good shots, and they made money. They go to Forest Avenue. When they move up to Forest Avenue in Ridgewood, he buys half the block. There's a pizza shop that he builds on the corner called Mama Mia's, and Anthony starts working there with his mother's brother, his uncle Mario. They're over there. They're just starting to get it together. But there's a story that Anthony, I remember because he got in trouble. And I remember when this happened. Some kid happened to touch a female relative of his in the ass. She went home, and one way or another since being a relative of Anthony, got to Anthony and his father. His father told him, go over there at school since you go to school with this young kid, and you're gonna fuck up that kid whoever touched her. You hear me? He said, yeah. And he was never always first one to go. Very, very extreme. Even to the day, I haven't seen him in a long time. Even to the 25 years ago, since I didn't see him, very extreme type. He goes to the school. He carries a knife. He sees the kid and he starts chasing him. When he chases the kid, the teachers know something's going on. He pulls the knife and he starts slashing away. He catches the kid really good. Cops arrest him. And he's young at this time, probably 13. So this is kind of like juvenile stuff, Spofford, whatnot. Dad gets a lawyer. Dad gets one of the best lawyers, too, at the time, in Mario Malabra's office. They had these two good guys. One was Jake and Russell Carbo. I think Russell took care of that case. Anyhow, they found a way to pay off the victim because they were down on their ass too, and they gave him a nice piece of change, and they let it go. So that was his first really brush with the law. So ultimately, after a couple of years of living in Ridgewood, Dad gets picked up by the feds.
Yeah, so he gets picked up in Puerto Rico. Apparently, well, they say at the time he gets arrested, he's a part of a group of individuals funneling heroin to a kingpin in Puerto Rico, apparently. Do you remember, what do you remember about that time? Do you remember hearing about his father being arrested?
Of course, but if I recall, his dad spent like a year in a Venezuelan prison, and then they
Really? Wow.
Yes, yes, and Anthony was about like a freshman in high school at the time, so he was about 15, 16 of age, you know. So they do transport him to Puerto Rico, and from Puerto Rico, they he waives his rights, and he comes to the states where he does his time. But he was in a real tough Venezuelan jail for about a year.
And this is all to do with, like you said before, he's connected with Conti and all these guys.
Yeah, and there's a lot of not only that, but in Venezuela in general, there's a lot of Italians that either flee in Italy or just set up shop in Venezuela, and they're in all types of drugs, from cocaine to heroin. Especially the Gambino side of the family had a lot of connections at that time in Venezuela.
Really? Yeah, apparently Puerto Rico too. I was looking at you brought up Pilara before, with the Alfano shooting. Apparently it was reported at the time that Patsy had a plane that was going or was going to board a plane that was going to Puerto Rico. That's what's been reported. So I guess they did have a lot of connects in Puerto Rico.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it's probably a tax haven or whatever it is. I mean, today it is. I don't know what was going on back then, but there was another guy that was arrested with his father, Giuseppe Pellerito, aka Joe the Italian. Does that name ring a bell?
Yeah, of course. That was Joe de Palermo-Danza's father's best friend. Another really
Okay,
tough guy,
interesting.
real interesting gangster for sure. So
Okay,
this
okay.
was the click. This was a little bit. It was a tentacle, and I use that word a lot of the Pizza Connection case. And at that point, he goes on to do like 7 years in prison. Right, Anthony. At that point, he makes his own friends, and these are the guys that eventually start coming up on Fresh Pond and Gates. Guys on Fresh Pond and Gates at that time that I was hanging out with, like Paul and Nat and a couple of other kids. Like we had this kid Anthony Geno who went legit. There was a lot of kids that went legit, but we had our own little thing on Gates and Fresh Pond, and he was starting to want go that way. He had his own little crew. He had the kid Riff, Anthony Vaccaro, John Nicolosi, and Pete Nicolosi, some goofy kid named Gagoli, and another kid Massimo. They all hung out together, and eventually they started flowing towards Gates Avenue. This is when everything was innocent still. Yes, we had gotten fights. There was not even the club fights yet. We were starting to explore gambling, playing in people's houses. Sometimes they would play in my basement. Sometimes we play in Paul's basement, and we kept busy. Our parents were like, as long as they're not getting in trouble. But this was definitely the prerequisite for a lot of bad things to come. And from there, we hung out in the wintertime. Eventually, we started hanging out at Nino's Cafe. That's on Palmetto and Fresh Pond. And that's where Anthony starts coming around a little bit more, around 17, 18 years old. He gets real close with Fabio and Paul Ragusa. And from there, we were always up to no good. Either we were gambling together, going places, getting into fights, just doing things that regular kids do in Italian neighborhoods, I guess. Not I know people are not gonna like that, but you know what I mean.
Of course, you're all friends. You're all growing up together. You're getting into trouble, and then, like you said, one of the other kids was like a nerdy kid. I mean, there's all different types of kids. Everyone
That's
goes their own direction, right? But at that time, he had a younger group of friends. You said and they started making their way over to your area. So how does that work? Well, you guys kind of know each other already, right? In a
right. We
sense.
start merging. And then if somebody comes up with some kind of scheme, the older kid will be like, "Oh wow, that's cool that they get closer to that kid." And we were scheming to a certain extent, beating bookies. We had he like Anthony was always the first to get himself in some kind of trouble, either losing $1,000 to a bookie when he was 16, or just beating somebody to a pulp with a weapon. He was always the first. He was this trendsetter, if you will, and Paul too. But like I said, Anthony was more extreme. He looked and but he didn't seem. He seemed like a happy kid. Where Paul always had a chip on his shoulder. We end up hanging out at Bobby Wizniak's club as well at that time. Nino's Cafe was on the outs, and Giannini's was about to open in a couple of years, a year and a half, like that. So a lot of the older people started going to the Giannini's that was Casablanca at one time. There was two Giannini's, remember that? So when the regular Giannini's that you guys know opened up, that Giannini's closed down, the Casablanca one. So a lot of the older people went over there.
Right.
Um,
And Nino's that we spoke about before, that was a yellow spot.
Yes, that was Tony Aiello's spot at one time, and Joe was supposed to take care of Joe Gambino, but he was
Right.
too young at the time. So Anthony's mother, Anthony Aiello's mother, who that was her property, just rented the place out to Barlow, and at least she was making money that way. They end up losing that property as well. The Aiellos do. That was a long time ago on a forfeiture. But back to Bobby, we go to Bobby's place and we're playing cards, we're hanging out. And my brother comes up with the bright idea of opening up Italian 90. He figured he's opened up a place. He puts a couple of Joker poker machines in there, and people start coming in there and play. After that, it became my friends' hangout. They all started coming. Even the girls used to come there and hang out a little bit. And the place was so small, some nights people couldn't even fit in the place. They had to hang out outside. You understand?
Yeah,
And
yeah,
that
yeah.
was like the beginning of the end because you had a couple of younger girls, you had a couple of attracting a little bit of the older guys. When I mean older, I'm talking about 2, 3 years older, not way older. And we would all hang out there, and with hanging out, idle time is the devil's playground. You get a lot of schemers who is going out experimenting with armed robberies, who was experimenting selling drugs, who was experimenting robbing the small drug dealer. This was like the beginning of everything that was to come. Anthony and Kenny, who he eventually kills, become acquainted with each other. Anthony's fascinated with somebody just not doing nothing, like we all were, and making money the illegal way. And that was very intriguing to him. And that was part of the whole dynamic that was going on. After my brother closes Italian 90, we go back to hang out to Nino's and then eventually the corner again because we had nowhere to go. During that period of time, Anthony's getting in trouble. Anthony's fighting. Anthony's robbing whoever he can. He gets with Kenny, and Kenny is a very bad role model, if you will. We discussed Kenny and how he would screw a lot of people over. In fact, they go after somebody that Kenny had screwed over in Florida. Did we talk about that?
Of course. Yeah, we certainly did talk about that. I know that since we've spoken about that, you've gotten a little more info on that case.
I looked it up a little bit better. Well, like I knew there was 3 people there, but then I was like, I just might as well. It's paper. It's on paper anyway. There was Anthony Sayako went to Florida with them too. So let me give you background. They go rob a drug. Kenny does a drug dealer, a Dominican guy in the Bronx. He robs him of his money, and the guy's looking for him. He finds out where Kenny lives, and he shoots down Kenny's house. Kenny's pissed off, grabs the 2 Anthony's, Siaka and Tabbita, and says, "Listen, I'll pay you guys $20,000 each. We got to go down to Florida, and we got to find this motherfucker before he finds us." The same theme with Kenny. He says, "Okay, let's go." They go to Florida, but before they go to Florida, they get 2 pipe bombs. They want to blow this guy up. It's a magnetic pipe bomb, and with a remote control that you could go back 50 yards. They got 2 of them. They grab Ralphie Schul, and they say, they don't grab him. Ralphie's intrigued by it. He said, "Let's blow one up." He goes, "Well, where are we going to blow it up?" So they blow it up in 60th and Palmetto, right there on a block away from Fresh Pond Road. And there's a couple of people I know that lived on the block. They put it in the sewer. They blow it up. And the whole system the whole pipes and everything burst. They shut down the block.
Jesus. Well, did they investigate it? Because somebody must have said a fucking bomb went off or
Oh
something.
no, they were pissed about it. I remember, they
I would
blew up,
say so. Yeah, yeah,
blew
yeah.
up this pipe bomb up at 60th. Of course, when something like that happened, you always knew who one of the culprits was. If it wasn't us, it was the kids on Madison doing something stupid.
Right,
But
right, right.
so that's so I guess it works. Let's go blow this guy up. So when
Jeez.
they went over there, they're riding around with this pipe bomb with a detonator in it, all the way to Florida. They figured it out. He goes, "How stupid are we? What the fuck were we thinking about?" So they leave this device by this guy's house because where he lived, figuring he'll come out, and they leave. They leave the device there, and they end up going home. And then while they're in the car, they think, well, that's not a good idea. Somebody might see it and get hurt, you know? When they go home, they call the cops and say, hey, look, there's a device over there. Go get it. The cops come there, they see it. And the janitor seen it too. And but they called. They take it and they bring it to like a football field and they blow the thing up. The thing was fucking really, powerful. And that's what happened. He ended up getting caught. One of them got caught with a fingerprint, I believe. I think it
Wow.
was Kenny,
Yeah.
obviously, because he got arrested first. And that was it. That was the story. You could catch that story full of one of our episodes.
So this is like 1991, right?
Hmm.
Right.
Yeah,
Okay.
because Anthony's just out of control. His assaults are like up to 3 or 4 at this point. He has one with this kid Patty Smith, and the kid wanted money from him. He ended up hitting him. He ended up with a bat right on his face, right in his jaw. He fucked the kid up. The kid was friends with Joe Messina's daughter, so it got back to Baldo, knowing that Anthony was around Baldo sort of way. Anthony had like 3 rabbis, but Baldo was one that took a lot of liking to. And he goes, we're gonna have to solve this because this kid wants to go to the cops. But he was like, this motherfucker is threatening the cops. First he goes to Joe Messina, but then he wants to go to the cops. Fuck him, you know. I don't know what happened to it, but I'll tell you a funny story. We went to sit down with Baldo about another case where we got into a fucking brawl with some kid that his father owned a liquor store up in Ridgewood. And it was kind of bad because the kid was a goofy bastard, but he liked to talk a little bit too much. And he got a beating in the hands of me, Paul, and Anthony. So the father went to somebody. We had to end up to go see Baldo at Giannini's. And the kid Patty Smith comes up. He goes, Anthony, this is like the fucking second time this week. He's telling Anthony. And he goes, that kid over there was friends with the Joe Messina guy. I know with that guy from the restaurant, Joe Messina. And Anthony goes, he's giggling, who the fuck is Joe Messina? And he grabs his mouth. Baldo grabs his mouth and says, shh, we're like trying to laugh and not laugh at
Oh
the
my
same.
God.
Right. And we start giggling and laughing like fucking what the
Where's
fuck?
that coming from? Is that coming from a place of arrogance or not being naive?
Being Sicilian too. We
Okay.
were aware at one point that
Okay.
he's pretended he's playing stupid. That's what he's doing. But he's
Okay.
coming
Okay.
from the right
Okay. You
place.
think Baldo thought that was funny though?
Yeah, he giggled, but he didn't like he didn't go further than that. He was like shh in the great Baldo way, he just went up there and grabbed him by the mouth, like shh, 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 with his mouth, like
Right.
like
Right. Right. Right.
and I looked and I put my head down because I knew my uncle was pretty tight with Joe. And that always deterred them from like being closer to me. Not them, but Baldo. Until like they all go away, and then I start getting closer to them. This is about a year before Baldo gets arrested, but it took a while. I knew him all my life, even as a baby. But like I told you, when Baldo came out of jail, he came out a little bit more bitter, and so he could be friends with my uncle because my uncle had a higher rank than him, but it wasn't meaning that he liked my uncle because my uncle also was a Joe Messina guy. I was a Joe Messina guy. I thought Joe Messina was everything. He made us proud in the family again to have a family like we did. So I was one of the rare ones. I remember years later being in a jail cell with 5 Neapolitan guys and me being the only Sicilian. And Robert Lino was joking around, but at the same time, he goes, how does it feel to be the only Sicilian in here? And I didn't think of it. And Joe looked up. It wasn't a joking matter, but I felt like saying at that point, being around real men because I was close to being, going to trials. So there was always that Neapolitan Sicilian thing or Italian American Sicilian thing. I didn't have it. My friends definitely did. Anthony had it. Anthony's dad had it. The Polaris had it. They didn't like Vito Guzzo. You understand?
Yeah, I get it. I get it. I
So,
pretty
so we
much.
never
Yeah.
did- and to them, he defied on one of his hits what this thing is about in their mind. So there was a lot of that going on. See me, I love Vito. It was crazy. I was getting more Americanized. Shame on me, right? Look what happened at the end of the day. Not in Vito's case, but in Joe Messino's case. Imagine that. I would have done anything for that guy. But let's go back to Anthony. Anthony was getting busy, so he's cracking this guy. He's cracking that guy. The beginning and the end comes one day. We're at the corner of Fresh Pond and Gates, and he comes over and he asks Bob if he could borrow his Mercedes. Bob had this immaculate Mercedes. It was dark blue, looked black. He was like 18, 17 at the time. No paperwork whatsoever. It had paperwork, proof of sales, but his license was warped, insurance, all that crap. He was going in and out of the 104th every other week with that car until they finally took it away. Anthony comes over. He goes, "Hey, can I borrow the car?" He goes, "No, my car." Bob was with this chick at the time. She had a Mustang, and she had this, the lettering on the window that said topless because it was a convertible.
Yeah.
Goes, "Nah, borrow her car. Don't worry about it. Bring it back like it was his. Bring it back anytime you want." He goes, "All right, no problem." So he goes up Gates Avenue, goes towards 60th, makes a turn, comes down Palmetto, and there's Joe Gambino getting into it. This big fucking Irish-looking guy, and they're getting into it big time. The guy's fucking him up. Anthony stops the car. Anthony Tabbita looks, gets out. The girl had a club, one of them things you put on the steering wheel.
Yeah, they got some weight to him too. So let me hear this.
Yeah, for sure. So he takes the club and whacks this fucking guy right in the head, but he doesn't get him full. He gets him like a half a swing, but enough to draw a lot of blood.
Jeez, I get him. Yeah.
He gets back in this girl's car full of blood, pulls up down, I don't know, maybe 300 feet to his left, and there's Fabio. Goes, "What the fuck happened to you? I mean, that fast? You're all for what? You kill somebody?" He goes, "No. The fucking Joe got into it with some guy down the block, and I just cracked him. He was fucking him up." He goes, all right, let's get the fuck out of here." So they take Fabio's car and they look what's going on, and they see that the guy's pretty fucked up and on the floor. There's ambulances there, and he says there's maybe like, I remember him telling the story, like 8 fucking cop cars there. All right.
Wow. Yeah.
So they take off. I think they went to Fabio's house at the time. And he goes, "Come with me." Yes, they did, because that's where Fabio gets arrested. They go to Fabio's house, and the next thing they know, like they knew where they were going. They followed them, the cops, like detectives, and they just fucking bum rush the house. And they grab, because he was going to give Anthony some money to go lamb it. And they bum rush him, and they're thinking to themselves, "What the fuck? Who is this guy?" Because they're really fucking going crazy about this guy. He was an off-duty cop.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. He cracked an off-duty cop. So they're making a big fucking to-do in front of Fabio's house. And Fabio goes, "Hey, listen, I got my family sleeping in the house. You got him now. Now get the fuck out of here." When he says that, the cop goes, "Oh, no, I think they want you too." So they bring him in. So they got both of them. They got both of them. They bring him to the 104th. He's pissed off. And the guy identified Fabio as being one of the guys that was there when he got hit. Okay, welcome to the 104th. I talked about these scumbag fuck. I mean, you got your guy who hit you, arrest him. Why you arresting everybody else? That's when I'm talking about the ends justify the means,
What did they get his plate? Did a witness get the plate, or so? Like, how did they know?
Possibly, I don't know. They just maybe somebody told them, "I know who they are."
Yeah, somebody must have said something.
We're always there. We always hang out there. So
yeah,
they ended up, but he went. They both brought him into the fucking. They both brought him into the central book, and they booked him. They were going to give Fabio time for that too, but somehow, some way, they convinced him that he wasn't there, and they got the goods on Anthony and Joe. Nothing happened to him, Joe Gambino, and that was the last straw for the city. They put him away. They sent Anthony up the river. They got everything together. They remanded him in court one day, and he went to go serve his 4 years.
4 years, huh?
He did 4. They gave him 1 to 4. They let him do the whole thing.
Right.
Yeah. So when he goes up there, he believe it or not, he gets to that's like gladiator school in a couple of these Kamasaki and all those places up in upstate New York. So
Yeah.
he got lucky. He sees my sister-in-law at the visiting one time. And he goes, I know that's Phil's wife, and he sees somebody talking to it, and that's her brother, Maurizio. So that was my brother's brother-in-law. And he brought him into his inner circles. The kid was a shot caller. He was in there for murder himself. Maurizio was, and they clicked and they gelled pretty good. Plus, there was a lot of guys that Anthony knew when he was a kid down in Bushwick. So he did good time while he was there, which I'm going to get into. He was moving drugs in there. He said it was great. Other than getting pussy, he goes, I would have been fine. And come to think of it, right? He comes out and eventually gets in more trouble. We know that. All right. He's got the 3 bodies while he's doing that time, but he comes out. Now, if he comes out 10 years ago, none of his friends are around anymore. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, yeah. I
If
mean,
he give him a 10-year fucking prison sentence, he comes out, let's say, in 2000.
yeah,
Everybody's arrested. Everybody's arrested.
yeah. But as you just said, he had 3 bodies already.
Oh, he would have been cooked because they ended up talking, some of these guys, and they would have just got him out of the state and brought him down to the feds. They do a lot of that. But he was a different kid. I think what happened with him was that he was killing too early. He didn't need to do that. None of us need to do that. It was a dick waving contest. Oh, I got more balls than you do. So we got into that, using guns. But we already had a name for ourselves on the streets. I think what elevated our game or enhanced our game was a couple of the older guys that were doing big things, and we didn't want to stay behind. That's exactly what happened. So if we would have grew up somewhere else, maybe we wouldn't have had this path.
Set it off on the left, y'all. Set it off on the right, y'all. Set it off. Come on, let's set it off.